In Dark Souls 1, upon finishing the game's final boss, Gwyn the Lord of Cinder, the player character is effectively locked out from returning to the rest of the game for that new game cycle. Lighting the bonfire that appears after his death triggers an ending, but even attempting to leave the arena will instantly trigger the Dark Lord ending and send the player to New Game Plus. Although From Software has since added the ability to choose when to start a new cycle in their later games, this design choice has been an unavoidable annoyance for Dark Souls 1 players since the game's release, as this design choice was kept intact with the release of Dark Souls Remastered in 2018. However, after nearly 15 years since the game's original release, I managed to figure out a way to circumvent this called Kiln Escape.
What? What? What just happened? Why am I here?
Hi, Regole here. In this video, I will show you how to perform the Kiln Escape yourself. On November 21st, 2024, a glitch hunter by the name of Eloise posted in the Dark Souls speedrunning Discord a massive discovery. A glitch called ladder storage had been discovered in Dark Souls 1. This glitch is instrumental in getting the Kiln Escape to work properly, so if you're not familiar with it, I'll give a quick summary. Using a critical attack such as a riposte after a parry or a backstab on an enemy while they're near a ladder, if you press confirm to enter the ladder animation at the same time as you press the shoulder button to initiate the critical, your character will begin the ladder climbing animation but cancel it into the attack instead. This is what initiates the ladder storage state. During ladder storage, your character's coordinates are saved at the entry point of the ladder where you attempted to begin climbing, as your character's coordinates do not update during a ladder climb. The game essentially considers you to still be climbing a ladder. This means you can travel all the way to the other side of the map, and then when you quit out, as long as something is not broken your storage state, you will respawn back at the location where you attempted to begin climbing the ladder. The very same day that Eloise posted the discovery of ladder storage in Dark Souls, I began testing on stream to see if this could be used to escape the kiln after defeating Gwyn, to circumvent being taken to New Game Plus. The concept is simple. If you're inside of Gwyn's arena and your coordinates are saved outside of the kiln because of ladder storage, you could theoretically quit out and reload to escape without being inside of the kiln, and avoid being forced into the game's credits, which is what resets the world state itself. After a few hours of testing on Prepare to Die Edition, I couldn't get it to work, and I was ready to give up when the ending cutscene started to play from what seemed like a failed idea. After waiting for the cutscene to finish, to my surprise, the credits did not play whatsoever, and I spawned an undead Berg with the game in the exact same state that I had left it in. I had just escaped the kiln without starting a new cycle. This was the very first recorded Kiln Escape. Unfortunately, upon triggering the final cutscene, the game had been sent to New Game Plus, but otherwise everything was left exactly intact. I did end up finding ways to avoid the game being sent to New Game Plus in Prepare to Die Edition, which I'll discuss later. But I tested the same thing on Dark Souls Remastered and discovered that using the same setup, it not only avoided the game state being reset, but it also avoids setting the flag for New Game Plus as well. That brings us to the explanation of how to execute the Kiln Escape itself. This is how you do it. First, you have to open the kiln with the 4 Lord Souls. Unfortunately, because a loading screen would reset your ladder storage state, Kiln Escape using ladder storage does not work with a wrong warp into the kiln. You need to actually have access to it with the door open from offering the 4 Lord Souls to the Lord Vessel. Second, activate ladder storage. The best place to do this is probably the ladder in Undead Parish in the bell tower before gargoyles. However, I recommend clearing out all the enemies in the church beforehand, as if any of the enemies stagger you, it will break the ladder storage state. You also might need to roll out of the critical attack when initiating ladder storage to avoid entering free fall when you exit the animation. This is another thing to keep in mind while executing Kiln Escape. Any free fall animation will also cancel the ladder storage state, so you don't want to walk off any platforms on your way from the ladder back to the kiln. Third, enter the kiln and kill Gwyn. As previously mentioned, you need to avoid the ladder storage state from being broken on this trip to Gwyn, as it is very fragile. After avoiding all the enemies in the church and taking the elevator down to Firelink Shrine, you will come to Framp's pit. If Frampt is still here for you, simply speak to him and use the warp option to enter the altar. Fair warning, however, make sure you wake up Frampt before initiating ladder storage, as punching him to wake him up will cause a mini stagger that can break the storage state as well. If he's not here for you, you need to use another glitch called an air roll so you can activate the trigger to warp you downwards without entering the freefall animation. Air rolls can be performed by simply equipping enough gear to put your character in between 25% to 29.2% equip load and then spamming roll on the edge while in midair so you can roll while falling. Now that you're in Firelink Altar, you can proceed to Gwyn's fog wall. Just make sure you don't get hit by any Black Knights on the way. Once you're passing through Gwyn's fog wall, you need to also make sure you spam roll out of the fog, because otherwise you will take a very small drop when exiting, which will also break the ladder storage state. Now you simply need to kill Gwyn without getting hit whatsoever. Good luck. And now for the final step of executing Kiln Escape. Once you have made it all the way here without ladder storage being broken and Gwyn has died, there is one more thing you must do. Unfortunately, you cannot just quit out of the game and reload, because transitioning down to Firelink Altar has updated your save coordinates to the position where you spawned in by the Lord Vessel. However, the position stored from the ladder still exists in the buffered queue that the game uses to update the player's position. So what you need to do now is break the ladder storage and then quit out of the game before 4 frames pass, as the game tries to update that buffered queue with your new location in Gwyn's arena. The easiest way to do this is to do a sequence of animations that drains your stamina, with the last animation being long enough to give you time to input a quit out as it executes and depletes your stamina bar. Once your stamina bar is fully depleted, your character will enter the animation of falling off a ladder. If you quit out during this animation in time, upon reload you will find yourself in Undead Parish directly underneath the ladder where you initially stored your position. Gwyn is dead, but the rest of the world of Dark Souls is just as you left it. Just make sure you don't use a Homeward Bone or Dark Sign until you rest at a bonfire, as your last location is still set to Gwyn's arena. If you do this and warp back there, you will no longer have any means of escape. Whenever you're ready to enter the next new game cycle, simply enter Firelink Altar again, and the final cutscene will immediately start to play. When executing this glitch for the first time, I recommend not only using save files for practice, but also the very useful tool called Gadget, which I'll link in the description. This tab on Gadget will display your character's last save coordinates, and while you're in the ladder storage state, it should remain static the entire time. If at any point you see this number start updating, it means you have broken ladder storage in some way. The only time your stored position should update is when you enter Firelink Altar, or when you actually execute the final step of the Kiln Escape itself. I also briefly want to mention that in Prepare to Die Edition, you can do everything exactly the same way, but for some reason, you will still see the final cutscene and everything will be scaled up to New Game Plus power level. However, the game state will not be reset, as it will still circumvent the credits. In order to avoid the New Game Plus scaling for Prepare to Die Edition, I had to actually use Oswald's ladder in the bell tower, which was very annoying to say the least. After executing the Kiln Escape, you will also clip out of bounds and get stuck, so you need to use a Force Quit Wrong Warp to get back to safety. Unfortunately, if you fail this Force Quit Wrong Warp, you'll spawn back in Gwyn's arena without any means of escape. I'm not sure why this difference exists between the two versions, nor do I understand why it seems to only be possible at Oswald's ladder, but I thought it was important to mention. So with that, that's all I have for today's video. I will likely be posting a meme run soon that features the Kiln Escape in it, so keep an eye out for that. But until next time, thanks for watching.